Is the American legal system irretrievably broken? That's our topic today. I am Mirna Santiago, and my regular co-host, Adeline Ortiz, could not join us today, so filling in for her is Professor Tyrone Simpson. Tyrone Simpson is a professor of English and American Studies. Welcome, Tyrone.
Thank you. Thank you.
And our returning guest panelist, we see you so much around here now, Don, is attorney and former president of the Westchester County Bar Association, Donald Sandford.
Thank you for having me. Nice to be here.
Well, our topic today is whether the American justice system is broken. I think so many people have taken umbrage at so many things that have been going on in the legal system over the past year. One of them was the Zimmerman verdict. We also had the Casey Anthony trial with the murder of her daughter, the death of the daughter. And we still have people who talk about the O.J. Simpson trial, which took place in 1995. So, Tyrone, I'm going to start with you. What do you think? Do you think our justice system is broken?
Well, I don't think the justice system is broken. I don't think the justice system has ever been broken, because I don't think the justice system is about justice. I think the justice system is about law and order. It's about finding rational, imperfect ways of solving disputes and making sure that conflict does not erupt into chaos. So yeah, I see the justice system as part of the Enlightenment project that said that we can aim for a more perfect union, but it would be fundamentally imperfect. But I'm interested in what Don has to say. Don, how do you feel about this?
You know, I think you and I are going to come down on the same side of this. To suggest that it's broken, it would be to suggest that there is a perfect system. I don't think there is. I think it's an outstanding system. I think it's probably one of the best systems in the world. Is there room for improvement? Of course there is. Does Michael Phelps have room to improve as a swimmer? Of course he does. Tons of world records, but there's always room for improvement. And I think when you stop looking to improve, then you are doomed to fail. So I would say that it is not broken, it's simply not perfect.
Well, I have to say, I'm going to disagree with you guys. I have to say the system right now, it's broken. And the reason I say the system is broken is because it's for sale. And I think a lot of people think that, and they won't say it. But if you have enough money, you can pretty much guarantee yourself the result that you want. Whether that was the O.J. Simpson verdict, whether that was the Zimmerman trial, because, you know, let's face it, once he got hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal defense funds, he was able to pretty much blow the prosecution out of the water. I think that the system currently, as it exists, is broken because you should not be able to purchase justice. Justice is exactly what it is. It's a justice system. You're supposed to be able to get a result that is just, and I don't think most people do. So I'm going to go back to you on that.
Well, I would say that the justice system is oriented toward justice, but I don't think that there's a sense of certainty about it. That is, the justice system is supposed to be capacious enough to allow for lawyer creativity, right? People, you're supposed to, from your legal training, you're supposed to develop a familiarity with the codes of justice so that you can get the best verdict for your client. And so just the legal profession, I think, is about winning. And if you go back, you know, I'm thinking about the framers of the Constitution. The framers of the Constitution were the most privileged men of American society at the time. And they put together a system, a code of law that was designed designed to produce law and order, but designed to produce law and order so that law and order would function in the protection of their interests, right? And their interest was to keep property secure, to keep their position in society as a powerful one. So I think that in the courtroom, that's where the powerless and the powerful come together to negotiate or mediate what can be construed as a reasonable resolution to the conflict.
But that's unfair. See, when you think about it, when you say that the Constitution itself was created so that these people of power, these people of money, could keep their position of power. That is what I'm saying is fundamentally unfair. You should not be able to buy yourself a result. And that's exactly the way it was created. So it's flawed. And there are other systems in the world. You know, Don, I have to take offense at what you said when you say we have one of the greatest systems in the world. That's all well and good. But if you're a person and you're standing in a puddle of crap, honestly, and if you're up to your knees in a puddle of crap, right, and it doesn't help your position to say, well, that person is standing up to their neck in a puddle of crap, and that's exactly what's going on with our legal system.
I disagree with you. I don't think it's that bad. And let me take Professor's point here.
Go ahead.
On O.J. Simpson and dovetail that with your comments. O.J. Simpson case was certainly a media circus. No one would debate that. It was tried in the public eye. I'm not sure it was fair to any of the participants in that case. However, who do you say brought justice there? Are you saying the state of California couldn't afford prosecutors to prosecute O.J. Simpson? I have a hard time believing that. They went bankrupt after that, perhaps,
Yes,
but not during that time. Nor do I think O.J. Simpson was able to purchase the best legal team money could buy. I think that it was a battle of facts and evidence. And I think the problem that we have is the way the American people perceive our criminal justice system. We have a 24-hour news cycle. We have networks that are dedicated to nothing but courtroom television. Mm-hmm. They have to give the viewer something. Mm-hmm. But what the viewers don't have is a distinction between the evidence that goes in front of the jury, which is what the decision is based upon, and the evidence that the prosecutors try to get in front of the jury, which is what's consumed by the American viewing public. And the distinction between those two bodies of evidence is terrific. So the viewing public is going based upon the evidence they understand. O.J. Simpson case, great example. There was plenty of evidence that didn't come in. The Bronco that we all saw on television, we said, do you see him in the Bronco? You know he's running from the cops. You have to convict him. That didn't come into evidence. Why? Because the police didn't maintain a proper chain of custody with that Bronco. There were actually folks who went into the Bronco, went through, and we're showing our age here, his cassettes, and helped himself to some of O.J.'s music. Right. So clearly it wasn't a proper chain of custody there. So anything coming from the Bronco doesn't get into evidence. Everyone watching the trial knows about it. The jurors are not allowed to hear about it.
Well, but you also think, when you talk about who bought themselves justice, I would definitely say O.J. Simpson. And people, and I don't know, again, we're showing our age, but I remember watching on television and people talking about O.J. Simpson's defense team, and they're referring to them as the dream team. And why was that? Because they were at the highest level of the legal circle in California. They were well connected, they were rich, they had the best forensics. I mean, who can forget that whole thing with Johnny Cochran, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. Honestly, if I was the prosecution in that case, obviously it's a glove, right? It's leather. It's been drenched in blood. It's shrunken. Obviously it's not going to fit. Come on. Why aren't you fighting harder for that? And I think in that particular case, and I watched every single minute of it, at least everything that was put on TV. I had a lot of time on my hands back then. But if you look at it, that dream team ran circles around the O.J. Simpson prosecution. And the reason for that is because, again, when you have prosecutors, those people are government employees. They're not highly paid, okay? And that's what you're going to get. You get what you paid for.
Well, here's where I think your argument falls down. And I think your argument would be better if you said O.J. Simpson's prosecution was supported by the Dream Team. Mm-hmm. The next arrest for murder was someone who did not have his money and had to face the same Christopher Darden and Marcia Clark prosecutors, and because they didn't have a great attorney, couldn't afford a great attorney, they didn't get the same result as O.J. Simpson. I think that might be a winning argument, but to suggest that Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden are poor prosecutors against O.J. Simpson's team, but great against a public defender, I don't think that's a winning argument.
They got papered to death. They got, they ran circles around them. They didn't have the tools they needed. And the reason they didn't have the tools they needed is because they were government attorneys. Not necessarily that they weren't great legal minds, but the fact is that you get whatever you pay for. And if you have people like the Johnny Cochran firm, if you have Shapiro, you have, who was the other, there were a whole bunch of attorneys. I mean, I'm sitting there looking at why does he need 6 attorneys sitting at that defense table? But he did, and he had other attorneys who weren't even at the trial, who were working 24 hours on this case. You get what you paid for, and unfortunately, our system allows that.
Well, Mirna, I'm surprised. I appreciate your idealism, but I'm surprised by it because the way I see it is that the legal system. I think we're in a moment in our society where we're looking for a pure space where virtue reigns supreme, and I simply don't see the legal system as that pure space, and it never has been. So let me explain what I'm talking about. So, for instance, with the Zimmerman trial, right? The stand your ground law is, from my vantage, is not something that's in the best interest of society. It cultivates an aggressive and violent society. But for a number of powerful forces have come together and decided that this should be the law, right? Another example. So, for instance, the legal statutes against contemporary immigration, right? And the concern about Mexican nationals coming into the United States. Well, what the law does not reveal is the fact that what's highly mobile is U.S. and other international businesses going into Mexico and hurting the Mexican economy such that it makes sense for Mexican nationals to come to the U.S. And so the law itself does not start from a pure space. It does not start from a place absence of money power, absent of capital.
Well, guess what, Tyrone? You just agreed with me.
Okay.
And that's exactly my point, is that you can never have justice if you allow for that sort of injustice that happens. That's the core of the American justice system. And it doesn't just happen in terms of attorneys. It doesn't just happen in terms of trials, But I used to work for an insurance company. And part of my job was to go during the legislative session. I had to drive up to Albany, and if there were bills that could potentially harm the bottom line of the insurance company, I was to sit down with the senators or the assemblymen or whatever and explain to them why those bills should not get passed. Right? I was basically, it was lobbying function, and the first couple of years, like you get rookie assemblymen, you get rookie senators, and they're like, oh, I'm here for the people and for my constituents and what have you. And then I would tell them, I said, okay, first of all, if you pass this law, if you happen to align yourself with the people who want this law passed, and we lose money, I said, the insurance company is not in the business of losing money. So guess who's going to end up paying for this law that you're passing out of your idealism? Right? It's going to be your constituents, because their insurance rates are going to go up. And secondly, I'd say, and we have a great PAC system, right? A political action committee. We have people who contribute. And if this law gets passed, unfortunately, we won't be contributing to you. And what ends up happening? What ends up happening, well, maybe if I want to run again, if I want to get reelected, I'm going to think about this law a little bit more. People are not idealistic. We don't live in a pure space at all. So it allows for money to govern. It allows it. That's why Sheldon Silver, who's the head of
the Speaker of the Assembly,
who's the head of the Assembly, right, in Albany. That's why he gets $3 million as of counsel to Whites and Luxembourg, which is a premier, if you will, a really large plaintiffs firm. Right? Why is that? Because of the politics of his influence. And that's why so many laws get passed that benefit the plaintiff's bar as opposed to the defense bar. So I think, again, you get what you pay for.
Well, I'm not sure that's entirely true, and I'll tell you why. At the beginning of the show, you gave my credits. I'm not a novice, but I do assigned counsel work, and I handle criminal cases as an assigned counsel. And I would suggest to you that although I get paid, get ready, Professor, $65 an hour for this work, that does not make me a lesser attorney.
Right.
And the students who come out of law school and take a job at legal aid where they're making $30,000 a year may be coming out of the best law schools in our country, and they may be very good attorneys, but just because they're not getting paid a tremendous salary doesn't make them necessarily bad attorneys.
But they're inexperienced, and God bless you for doing that work. We do need experienced attorneys to provide a defense to people who need it, but not a lot of experienced attorneys are going to do that.
Again, I'm going to debate that with you because right now the Chief Judge of the New York State Court of Appeals is looking at mandatory pro bono for attorneys in New York State, which would require all attorneys in New York State to be doing pro bono work. And if whether you believe that as an appropriate use of the system or not, if that comes to fruition, every single attorney in New York State is going to be giving free legal representation.
I think it would be great if that actually went through, but I know that on my part, being familiar with the New York State Bar Association, people are fighting that tooth and nail because that takes out of your billable hours, that takes out of your ability to be able to feed your family if you now have to provide free legal work when there are attorneys who are on assigned panels and what have you to do that.
And there's also a constitutional issue.
And that
requiring people to work for no pay. We had a problem with that. We had an amendment to the Constitution a few years back on that issue.
So people are fighting that tooth and nail, but actually that would be a great step, because then you do have attorneys who from all levels of experience who would be providing legal advice to people who desperately need it. But right now that's not the way it works.
But as a practicing attorney, do you know any attorneys who only work billable hours and don't provide any free legal work?
A lot of people do, unfortunately. Unfortunately, a lot of attorneys don't provide, free legal work unless it's to your families or your friends or what have you. But again, I commend you, and I commend any attorney who is of experience who provides that free legal work, because it's necessary. But right now, I think the way I see the legal system, it's broken in that the more money you have, you can paper the prosecution, you can provide the best forensics, you can do whatever it is, and the government attorneys cannot go toe-to-toe on those issues. There's only so much money they can spend. There's only so much time they can spend if they have these cases and they're working up these files.
I'm not sure I agree with you, because I don't think that, and I think the system suggests that a prosecutor is an elected official. And they are not going to say, you know what, I'm not going to prosecute Don Sandford as fully as I can because I don't have the money for it. When you have a case that's a high-profile case, you're going to spend whatever you need to get a conviction in that case, because you don't want to lose a high-profile case because you're going to lose your next election. I don't recall what happened to the district attorney who was supervising the prosecution of O.J. Simpson's case, but I don't believe he was reelected, is my recollection of that. And I think that that is a driving force between having the government do the best job they possibly can. And clearly, in a case like that, I can't imagine that Christopher Darden and Marcia Clark got up in the morning and said, I'm going to go to court today and get my rear end handed to me because I'd like to be embarrassed on national television. I think they dug in every day and did the best job they possibly could with the facts they had. I don't think that you can buy a defense that will overwhelm what the government can do.
Do you, I'd like to ask a question. There's a way in which our average Americans have been tutored in legal information, right? There's been kind of and what I mean by that is it's not only the 24-hour news cycle where there are channels that are dedicated to covering what's going on in courtrooms, but much of the entertainment of late night television is Law and Order. It circulates around legal machinations, and so I'm wondering if either of you can say more about how you think what this does to our society, that there's a way in which the law is so accessible yet so inaccessible.
Let me give you a brief response to that, and I know Mirna wants to get on to her lightning round. I've been here before, I know how this works, but I think my watching a show about engineering doesn't make me the person to go out and inspect your building and make sure it falls over. I think the same thing is true about the law.
Yeah, I agree, Don, and I think you touched upon that before about how what's available to the jury is really not the same information that's available to the viewing public or to just the lay people in general. So it's completely different, even though what you see on TV is entertainment, pure and simple. It's not actually reality. It's not real life.
Well, I'm wondering if I'm always suspicious. I'm wondering if there's a way in which the spectacularization of the legal profession, that is the televisual proliferation of the legal profession, is another way in which the powerless get to reckon with their powerlessness, right? I wonder if that.
I think if by watching Law and Order, people tend to think, well, that you could get justice and you can do this and you could do that. And you already know how jaded I am on the issue. So if it makes you feel better to watch Law and Order, then carry on. But we do have two great lightning rounds.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We have a two-parter for the lightning round, and I'm really excited about it. One is I've seen a lot of, and there's another thing where money comes into play, because I've seen a lot of high-profile family law cases and custody cases play out. We've had Usher, who was able to wrest custody away from the mother, Deion Sanders, Dwayne Wade. There have been so many cases where the fathers have been awarded custody of their children. Now, so Don, I'm going to start with you. Following a divorce, is it always in the best interest of the child to be with the mother, you think?
It absolutely isn't, and it is the responsibility of the judge hearing the case to look at those facts very carefully and see who is going to be a good parent. One of the issues that comes up frequently, because divorces are so contentious, is who can maintain a good relationship with for the child with both parents. In other words, who will not disparage the other parent? Who will make sure that Father's Day is honored the same way Mother's Day is honored, that your Jewish traditions are honored the way my Christian traditions are honored? And if a parent is unable to do that, and if a mother is unable to do that, the judge will say, you know what? You're not doing what's best for your child. And they'll award custody to a father in circumstances like that, which is appropriate.
Okay. Tyrone, what do you think?
These are dangerous. Dangerous circumstances. First and foremost, it seems to support your idea about how money shapes the legal system, right? So at least the three examples that you offered, you have very, black men with a great deal of money. The other thing I want to say is, in the field that I study, cultural studies and race, it's interesting that there's a way in which these cases abide by how black women are not adequate mothers, right? And so that concerns me too. And we have a history in this society of kind of the welfare mother image, et cetera, et cetera. That aside, I think the court, I think I'm with Don. The courts should direct their support toward whoever can be the best parent. But it may be that the best parent, the courts lean toward the people who have the most money.
Oh, yeah, I'm seeing that a little bit more and more, which is a little bit frightening to me, especially as a mother, because in these particular cases, these men tend to travel a lot, and these women are stay-at-home moms, so it boggles the mind, at least in my mind, why the court would say, well, you're better off being with your father and being raised by nannies, where you could be with your mother and see your father as long as they have visitation and what have you. But like you said, Don, there may be other issues at play that we're not privy to, sort of as the viewing public. So, and the other part of the lightning round discussion is I came across an article. It was a study that was published recently in CNN. And the study said, and it was a study of 70 men, right? And it said that the study found that men with larger testicles tend to not be good nurturing dads. And the conclusion seems to be that because the testicles provide testosterone, that men with higher testosterone levels are out, providing for their family. They're not necessarily reading bedtime stories. Right. Okay? So is it considered unmanly to be a good dad?
Let me address both those questions. First of all, the men that have the free time to make these comparisons with their fellows, friends, aren't spending enough time parenting. Pull up the pants, pick up a book, and read to your child. I don't think there's anything unmanly about being a good father. I think in a society where we look at a divorce rate that is 50%, you better be a good father, because that child relies upon you to learn those things that are specific to a male. There are male role modeling that takes place in the family that a male child learns from a father and a female child learns from a father, and you have a responsibility when you have a child to demonstrate to your child what is proper behavior for a male in society.
Absolutely. Tyrone, what do you think?
Whoa.
Is it unmanly to be a good dad, to be a nurturing dad?
Well, absolutely not. I mean, I think that's ridiculous. And again, I try not to gender it. I try to focus on who can be the best parent, and in whatever way they can be the best parent, that's fine. And so it's not unmanly or unwomanly. But I don't want to. I worry about focusing so much on gender roles in the family, or focusing on the family in a very traditional sense. I mean, we have to think about the fact that 2 of our last Democratic presidents come from broken homes. And so what I wish for American society is to be more creative about what constitutes a family and what roles people can take in order to raise great children.
Well, for me, I have to tell you that watching my husband with my son always makes me love him more. And he says too, I mean, we grew up in families where it was very traditional, where my father never did any of the nurturing, no bedtime stories, no tucking in, none of that stuff. He was just there to provide, and you would see him when you saw him. And the same thing for his father. And even he says sometimes he has to remind himself to be a nurturer, to go tuck my son into bed, or to read him a story, or to sit with him and say, what's bothering you today? So he says it's all about mimicking what you were taught. So I think it's less about the size of your balls and more about where it is that you're going in terms of your brain, and what it is that you want and want to value.
And I would say, I think we'd be a better society if men were more nurturing. I think part of the problem is that men do a lot of role modeling of hyper testosterone laden behavior, and not enough hugging, not enough caretaking, and that could be part of our problem.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you again, gentlemen, for being here with me today. And we're wishing that Adeline gets better soon. And we thank you all for watching The Opinion. And please keep sending us your emails. Keep watching us on YouTube. Going on theopiniontalkshow.com. We love to hear from you. Thank you for watching.